This is a Zach Feldman Show replay on ZRadioLive.com.
The website music station ZRadio Live. This is the Zach Feldman Show. Joining me over the phone is an author. His name is David Lucky, and he has a brand new book, Exposing Putin's Lies, His Comrades, Apologists, and Trolls, and His War in Ukraine. David, thanks for joining me here on the Zach Feldman Show. How's everything going?
Everything's going great. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, anytime. And I'm excited to kind of give Putin the old, fuck you. So here we go. Let's talk about it. Exposing Putin's Lies. Tell me all about what this book is all about.
Sure, absolutely. So the majority of people in the U.S. and other Western countries are against Putin and for Ukraine, but there's surprisingly a growing amount of support for Putin and his inner circle, and there are a lot of people online that are pushing Putin propaganda. He has trolls, he has apologists. One of the reasons why this is growing is because Putin and his inner circle they've hired over 50,000 trolls that are online. They're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, day and night, and they're doing nothing but pushing his propaganda. And although most people have a general sense that Putin is wrong in this conflict, there are a lot of people that now have doubts. They don't know. They don't have the tools. They don't have the information to push back. And the trolls have a lot of information, a lot of talking points, and just a lot of people, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to push back. And my book gives people the information to push back on the Putin propaganda. And
there's a lot of also, I mean, from what I've read about Putin's, kind of wrath on the internet, is like, he's hired like influencers, from Russia to kind of, talk about how great Russia is and how great everything's going, and how all this is just a good thing, and it's really just it's kind of heartbreaking, and it kind of also reminds me a little bit about like Hitler in a sense.
Absolutely, there's a lot of parallels there, definitely.
Yeah, so I mean, tell us about what some of the other exposing lies that people who are not as familiar with the subject should be kind of shocked to read about when they read the book.
Sure. Okay. So I have a list of it's a partial list of some of Putin's lies. Now, when I say Putin's lies, some of these come directly from Putin, and some come from his inner circle, his elites, and the people he's involved with. Can I read this list real quick?
Yeah, sure.
This is some of the lies that Putin and his people are pushing. Okay. And this is all tailored to justify his illegal invasion of Ukraine. Okay. So number one, they say Ukraine is not a real country. Number two, Ukraine is only part of Russia. Ukraine, now Putin said this directly, Ukraine can only have real sovereignty as a partner with Russia. Okay, that's actually an Orwellian statement that actually makes absolutely no sense. They said at the beginning, for months, when they were lining up troops at the border, they said we will not attack Ukraine. Well, we now know that that's false, because they did attack and invade Ukraine.
Yeah, they definitely invaded Ukraine. I can guarantee that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They said, in conjunction with that, they said we are not planning on attacking Ukraine. Then weeks after they attacked Ukraine, they said we did not attack Ukraine.
Let me ask you this, about all this. I mean,
sure.
Obviously, it's terrible what Putin has done to Ukraine and what's been going on there. But how do you, decipher the influencers from the people who actually just believe that Putin is doing a good job at what he's doing?
Right, exactly. Good question. So I spell out in the book that there's different levels of propaganda. On the lowest level, you have the trolls. You have the Putin trolls, and there's over 50,000. There may be a lot more than that, because they keep a lot of this hidden and secret, and a lot of this is funded through Putin's oligarch friends. So these are people that they're hired. They're paid good money for people in Russia, above average wages, and they're on their computers about 10 to 12 hours a day. They all have fake social media accounts, and they're just pushing these messages day and night. So they may not even believe it, but that's their job, and they're just pushing this stuff out. Okay, then beyond that, you have the elites, and the elites are his inner circle, and then you have the apologists. So we even have apologists in this country. That these are people who they have taken the bait and drank the Kool-Aid, and they believe he's doing a a good thing. They have different justifications. They think he's fighting back against globalism, and they think that one of the lies, and I deal with all of this in the book. One of the lies is that, well, really the United States started this war, and Putin is just trying to defend himself.
Yeah, that's just not true.
It's not true.
It's actually far from the truth. I feel like we've kind of stayed out of it as much as we could, and I feel like as much as Ukraine has tried their best to try to persuade us to be part of this war just to help them, and we have sent some aid to help them. I think we've done enough job where we're just kind of like, let's just stay out of it. We'll put our regulations against Putin to kind of tell him, this is not right. But at the same time, we're staying as far back as we can.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of people forget what has happened because the events change so rapidly. So, and again, this is one of the talking points that the trolls are pushing and the apologists are pushing. They say, well, the United States really wanted this war. But as I point out in the book, the United States did not want this war. Not only the United States, but NATO did not want this war. Europe did not want this war. And by the way, I provide sources and evidence for all of my major claims. So one of the things I point out, and I give evidence for this, is that for months before the war happened, we pleaded with Russia not to start the war. We begged them not to start the war, and we even threatened them with heavy sanctions. We've told them repeatedly, do not invade Ukraine, or we will put heavy sanctions on you. That was repeated for weeks and weeks.
And now look at their McDonald's.
I've been to Russia and Ukraine multiple times. I do a lot of reading, so I keep up on this subject quite a bit, and so I'm aware of all of the talking points, the propaganda, what they're pushing.
Yeah. Have you been back to Ukraine since they've been attacked, or have you kind of stayed away just for safety reasons?
I've stayed away. I have been to Europe since after they attacked. I've been to Romania, which is a border country, dealing with some refugees over there. So, but I haven't gone into Ukraine. As a matter of fact, the U.S. state government will not allow any citizens to go into Ukraine right now. It's something that you really want to avoid. It is highly dangerous.
I feel like no matter where you want to go, though, I feel like there's always a way to get in, no matter how you do it. But I 100% agree. I'm glad you're staying safe, and I'm glad you're staying away from that area. I mean, my heart always goes out to them because it's just so sad how such a free sovereign country, is now just turning into rubble, and it's by somebody who just has such a power trip. It really, really does. And do you have any advice, I guess, for people who are, trying to figure out what to do when it comes to like trying to avoid like this propaganda?
Yeah, good question. So, just to recap earlier, you're totally right that if you wanted to go into Ukraine, you could do it. So if somebody wants to go, but it's just that the State Department is saying no, don't go. And so what that basically means that if you can go there, but if you do go,
obviously not encouraging anybody to go because they shouldn't, but.
Yeah. Well, what happens is if you do go into Ukraine, it's very dangerous. And let's say if you get captured and taken hostage, the government will not be able to help you. So you're basically on your own. So that's
definitely
why they're telling
stay away as much as you can. But tell us, exactly. what can we do as Americans and what can we do as a nation and as the world, trying to figure out.
Okay, the very best thing they could do literally is read my book, Exposing Putin's Lies. And there are a number of good books out there on all different subjects. Now, there are books about, Putin's biography, about his life, about Russia, a lot of good books. This is the only book that I'm aware of that goes into detail all of the propaganda and these issues. So, for example, the book, it covers the trolls. There's a chapter on apologists. There's a chapter on revisionist history. And that's one of the things that Putin uses. He uses revisionist history a lot. He changes and lies about the history. Basically, he says things that, like, Ukraine was never really their own country. They were always part of Russia. And he uses that in order to justify going in and taking Ukraine back. Okay, so there's a chapter on pretext and Nazis. That's one of the big things that he uses pretext, which is basically a fake reason. It's a fake excuse for going in and attacking. So one of his points was, that, and I'm paraphrasing, that there's Nazis everywhere in Ukraine. and we have to go in and free the Ukrainians from the Nazis. Okay, now that's, and I point this out, that's just a huge lie. That's just utter nonsense.
Yeah.
It turns out that there are a lot. Now there are a few Nazis, neo-Nazis in Ukraine, just a very small amount. But it turns out that there's actually a lot more Nazis or neo-Nazis in Russia, and none of them, nobody in Ukraine was threatening Russia. So basically. The book goes into NATO. That's another lie that he had. There's a huge lie. There's so many talking points that we cover on this. One of Putin's pretexts and lies was that he said that, well, NATO broke an agreement with Russia or the Soviet Union at the time back in 1990, and they agreed to not expand, but now they've been expanding, and Ukraine is threatening to become a member of NATO, so we have to go in and take over Ukraine now because they might become, they might become a NATO member, and NATO broke an agreement. Now, it turns out that that's all a huge lie. One of his talking points, and he's mentioned this many times, is he said that there was an agreement, and not only Putin says this, a lot of us apologists say this. They said that NATO, you'll hear this quite often, NATO and the Soviet Union had an agreement that they wouldn't expand back in 1990, and that there was an agreement between the Secretary of State at the time, James A. Baker, and Gorbachev. He said that they had a verbal agreement, wasn't written down, it wasn't signed, but they had an agreement that NATO would not expand. And now they're expanding, so they broke the agreement, so that gives us the right to go in and attack Ukraine. Now, there's a huge problem with this that I point out in the book, and that is that the two major parties of the discussions in 1990, James Baker and Gorbachev, both deny that there was an agreement and that there was even any discussions about that.
Interesting.
So,
well, readers definitely need to take a look at that book and see, and see the answers here, because there's so much to uncover here too. And also, I'm kind of fucking pissed at Putin for using the Z, because that's my thing. But that's aside the point.
Right, exactly, yeah. Exactly.
That fucking pissed me off. And when I saw that, I was like, "Oh fuck, here we go."
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's why we have that on the cover of the book. As you see, he has a red Z on his forehead.
It's good. I'm glad it's red, not green. We are ZRadio Live. That is our thing, not his thing.
Exactly. So he's doing copyright violations.
RZ is good. I could sue him. I should sue him, shouldn't I? That's a good idea.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that'll go over very well. Before you go, obviously, I want to ask too, because this has been all over the news lately about Putin, his possible cancer diagnosis. Is this true? How do you feel about this? Like, do you think this is true? He actually has some form of cancer, or do you think this is all just kind of more lies in the media or somewhere?
Right. That's a very good question. Yeah, that has been all over the media for weeks now. I think that is possibly some propaganda. So there's no evidence that he does have that. There was an article that just came out a couple of days ago, and the opinion of some higher ups is that he does not have cancer. But I think
that might be where Putin's telling lies.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. But I think he needs to be defeated. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to defeat him philosophically and show that there is no moral justification for what he's doing. That's real important. And the reason that's important is because even if he were to die, let's say he did have cancer, which I don't know. Nobody knows for sure. I'm kind of leaning towards maybe he doesn't. But even if he were to die, what we don't want is a junior Putin coming and taking over with the same policies.
Just like they have in North Korea too, where it's always just the next family member.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't want one of his close associates
taking the realms or anything like that. I agree with that completely. Let's try to stop it. Let's just try to stop it once and for all, and become more of a free and happy nation if we can, or a happy world, I should say.
Yeah. Now, I will say one thing which is that, and I point this out in the book. Most people in Russia, they are living in a complete Orwellian bubble. Mm-hmm. So what I mean by that is the news is all state controlled. There is no news that they listen to on the TV that is not filtered by the Kremlin. The Kremlin, Putin's inner circle, they tell their state controlled news what they can say, what they can't say. They construct these elaborate narratives And everybody in Russia watching this news, they get this beaten in their heads day in and day out. So they're told things that like, well, Ukraine is taken over by Nazis and Nazis everywhere. We're going in to liberate. So they don't know a lot of. Now, there are some people that are able to fake their IP address and they can go in and they can get some information. But even the ones that know what's going on, they have to be very careful, because if they say the wrong thing, they can go to prison for up to 15 years if you say anything that disputes the Kremlin narrative. So you have huge portions of people in Russia that do not know, and then you have small portions that do know, but they're afraid to say anything. So it's my belief that if everybody in Russia were to read this book, that the support for this war would dwindle, and the war would end very soon.
Well, I pray that that's the case, and I pray that actually happens, because we really need to help Ukraine as much as we can to recover everything they've lost. And it's just it's terrible, and it's just horrible what has happened in that country, and also what's happening in Russia too. It's just all this is just a goddamn mess, and I hope one day it's all fixed up. David Lucky, again, the book is called Exposing Putin's Lies. David, where can people pick up the book?
Okay, so the book is on Amazon. It's on Amazon in 3 different formats: a paperback version, hardcover version, and Kindle version. So just simply go to Amazon.com and do a search for either my name or just type in Exposing Putin's Lies.
Well, David Lucky, thank you so much for joining me here on the Zach Feldman Show. And if you'd like to help out Ukraine, one best organization to go to is Save the Children. They've been providing support through public health, education, nutrition, advocacy, and emergency relief for children in need, and especially those in the Ukraine area. So go to savethechildren.org to donate today.
Thank you very much, Zach. I appreciate this.
Anytime. The website music station, ZRadio Live, back with more Zach Feldman Show.